Here are 7 problems with Trump's peace plan. Number one, there's no punishment for Hamas terrorists. They receive amnesty if they disarm and agree to peacefully coexist. And so all they have to do is lay down their arms, which they will do if they have to. But you know good and well they're going to lie and deceive and then become an insurgent terrorist force. And this is in their charter. In the Hamas charter, they are dedicated to lying and deceiving to reach their end, which is to destroy the nation of Israel. And so they're just going to lay down their arms and just become a part of society, and then they'll become an insurgent force, more dangerous probably then than they are now. Over 2,000, number 2 problem with the plan is over 2,000 terrorists are being released in the exchange for the hostages, and they all hate Israel and are vowed to their destruction. 250 Palestinians serving life sentences are being released. One of those Palestinians serving a life sentence raped and killed a Jewish boy. He's not going to go free. 1,700 Gazans detained since October 7th are also being released, over 2,000 in all. Terrorists, the worst of the worst. Does anyone really believe these terrorists or Hamas will live in peace with Israel and stop trying to destroy them? It's delusional. Number 3 problem with the peace plan is Hamas is being trusted not to be a part of a future Gazan government. Now, in other words, in this peace deal, it says they have to agree they're not going to be a part of a future Gazan government. Well, first of all, they're masters at deceit. And how do you vet people who wear masks? You know, when they show up to be a part of the new government, and see, the Palestinians ultimately will be the government, and they'll be overseen by an international force, but they are right now, the United Nations, and it's a joke. And so they have to agree not to be a part of a future Gazan government, which is a joke. Number 4 problem, a reformed Palestinian Authority will take over Gaza. Okay, so after October 7th, they said they're going to reform the Palestinian Authority. Okay, after October 7th, Prime Minister Netanyahu said there's no difference between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority. Now, and I'll show you this later in this message. I'll show you that there's no difference. But the Palestinian Authority is corrupt to the core, and so they say they're going to reform them. Number 5 problem is Israel must withdraw completely from Gaza, and they cannot annex it. In other words, they permanently take Gaza away from Israel. They cannot annex it, and the IDF is removed from Gaza, which means some other security force has to come in and try to secure Gaza. Look how difficult it's been for the IDF, who is the most brilliant military in the world. Look at how difficult it's been for them to try to secure Gaza. Imagine an international force coming in, and this is number 6 problem with the peace plan. The security of Gaza will be left up to an international stabilization force that will train vetted Palestinian police and help secure border areas of Egypt and Israel. So in other words, an international agency, an international body. Well, that's like the United Nations. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency, known as UNRWA, okay, they were helping the Palestinians. They were created to help the Palestinians. Hamas was embedded. UNRWA was a part of October 7th. Many of the UNRWA agents were a part of the October 7th massacre. Hamas was embedded throughout UNRWA, and they took billions of dollars. They used UNRWA and other agencies to funnel billions of dollars to Hamas. Does anybody really believe that an international force is going to be able to come in there and not be corrupted and not be compromised? And the only reason that it's allowed, all that's allowed, is because just everybody hates the Jews. It's unbelievable after October 7th that anyone would recognize Palestine as a state. And so, but the number 7 problem with all of this is, let's just say, Jimmy, you're being too cynical. Okay, great. At the end of the peace deal, the last part of the peace deal, it says if you meet all these conditions before, there's a pathway to statehood. This is a formalized promise to them that if you do all these things, there's a pathway to statehood. Now, I don't believe they're going to do all those things, but this gets into the God problem. Let me talk about the God problem with this deal. And here are the God problems with this plan. There's 3 of them. Number 1, it divides the land God gave to the Jews as an everlasting possession. Now, Genesis 17:8, God says, I give you to this. He says this to Abraham. Also, I give to you and your descendants after you the land in which you were a stranger, all the land of Canaan as an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. See, God made an everlasting covenant with Israel, and Israel is a people, and Israel is a land. And God said to Abraham, I give you all this land, as an everlasting possession. That includes Gaza. That includes East Jerusalem. That includes Judea and Samaria. It includes all that land. And some people say, well, why do we love the Jews? I mean, can a Jew be saved without Jesus? No, they can't. Beginning, with the day of Pentecost, when the Holy Spirit fell, you have to receive Jesus to be a part of the church, to be saved. But Jewish people are special by covenant. The land of Israel is special by covenant. We respect the Jews and love them. First of all, we got Jesus from the Jews. We got the church from the Jews. We got the Bible from the Jews. Is when God said to Abraham, in you all the nations of the earth will be blessed, the whole earth has been blessed because of the Jews. And so we love them for that reason. We also love the Jews and treat them carefully because God is in an everlasting covenant with them that he's still honoring. But listen to Joel chapter 3, and this tells you now what's going to happen. This is talking about the future. Joel 3, behold, in those days and at that time, when I bring back the captives of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, and I will enter into judgment with them there, on account of my people, my heritage Israel, whom they've scattered among the nations, they have also divided up my land. Now, this is today. God says, in those days and at the same period of time, when I bring back the captives of Judah and Jerusalem, that was 1948. Israel's been a nation now for 77 years. At that same period of time, I'm going to bring all the nations down to the valley of Jehoshaphat. Well, the valley of Jehoshaphat is the valley between the Mount of Olives and the Temple Mount. Okay, and this is Revelation 19, Zechariah 14, the second coming when Jesus returns to the Mount of Olives. This is where he comes and destroys the nations of the world that have come against Jerusalem. And so Jesus himself destroys them. He says, I'm going to come into judgment with the nations of the world because of two things. The way they've treated my people, and they've divided up my land. Now look at what's happening in the world right now. Look at what's happening. The Jewish people, there has never been, I don't believe, this level of anti-Semitism in the history of the world. And that is saying a lot because there's been anti-Semitism many times. What's happened since October 7th is satanic. There is a satanic spirit of anti-Semitism. Satan hates the Jewish people for many reasons, but because they proved the existence of God. Israel is the only nation that God ever created. And it proved the existence of Israel proves the existence of God. But also that's where Jesus came from. Satan's ultimate enemy came from the Jewish people, and he is a Jew. So Satan hates the Jews. He wants to destroy them. The nations of the world are coming against Israel as never before. The United Nations is the largest anti-Semitic body in the world. And they're against Israel. They censure Israel and come against Israel more than all the other nations of the world combined, ignoring Russia, ignoring North Korea, ignoring Iran, ignoring China, all these other violators and criminals. They ignore them and attack constantly the nation of Israel that's simply trying to exist. Armageddon, Joel chapter 3, Armageddon is God's response to what's happening right now. The mistreatment of the Jewish people and the division of the land of Israel. And this peace treaty formalizes it. It formalizes a two-state solution. If these other conditions are met, which they won't be, if these other conditions are met, it's going to formalize a two-state solution. So God's angry. God is so angry at the division of the land of Israel, he's going to gather all the world together. This is like a United Nation force that comes against Israel. He's going to destroy them when he returns. This is God's response. So this is a God problem. When you divide the land of Israel, you've got a God problem. The second God problem with this is it rewards the Palestinians for decades of terror. They're terrorists. Okay, and so let me read some articles here and just prove to you who the Palestinian people really are. This is an article from Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs. This is talking about pay for slay, how they pay their people to kill and harm Israelis. This is from this article. Another central part of the pay for slay policy is the Palestinian Authority PLO payments to wounded terrorists and the families of dead terrorists. In addition to the imprisoned terrorists and released terrorists, there are an additional 40,000 families of dead terrorists and tens of thousands of wounded terrorists who also receive payments. Given the authorities' commitment to continue paying financial rewards to the terrorists and taking into account the centrality of the terrorist prisoner issue to Palestinian society, on the one hand, and the Palestinian Authority's track record of doing the utmost to hide and conceal pay for slave payments, the only way to judge whether the PA has indeed halted all the payments will be when the families of the terrorists who have suddenly lost their primary source of income take en masse to the streets to demonstrate against the Palestinian Authority. The quiet on the Palestinian street on this subject is the clearest indicator that the Palestinian Authority has not truly stopped the payments to the terrorist prisoners, released prisoners, wounded terrorists, or the families of the dead terrorists. The Palestinian Authority pays hundreds of millions of dollars a year in pay for slave to all these families, to people in prison, to people who have been wounded, to people who have killed Israelis. Hundreds of millions of dollars a year, and this article says it right. If they had stopped, and say they lie constantly, and they'll say, no, we've stopped those payments. If they had stopped those payments, the Palestinian people will be rioting in the streets, because for many of those people, that's their primary source of income. But we want to give a state to people who pay their people to kill other people, to kill the Jewish people. Okay, here's another problem with the Palestinians. They named their government buildings, public squares, and public schools after dead terrorists. Now, this is an article from Palestinian Media Watch. The PA Ministry of Education has named at least 28 schools after terrorists and an additional 3 schools after Nazi collaborators. By naming schools after terrorists, the Palestinian Authority is telling its children most emphatically that terrorists who have murdered Israeli citizens are role models and heroes. Palestinian Media Watch found evidence that in practice, students who attend such schools refer to terrorists as personal heroes whom they look up to and aspire to emulate. And so can you imagine, you drive around, town, George Washington High School, Abraham Lincoln Junior High, you see we name our public schools after good people, after heroes. They named theirs after terrorists, and now the children, this is another issue with the Palestinians, they teach their children from birth to hate the Jewish people. It's part of their curriculum in school. This is an article, this is an excerpt from the Allgemeiner in 2024. It says, now a study from Tel Aviv University's Institute for National Security Studies has confirmed our worst fears. Its review of Palestinian Authority school curricula has found that the Palestinian Authority continues to espouse some of the worst views against Jews in Israel in their textbooks. Palestinian Arab children are still being taught to dehumanize Israel and Jews. Instead of aspiring to live peacefully next door to Israel, they aspire to securing Palestinian justice over Israel's ruins, to adhere to the vision of ending the state of Israel. In fact, Israel's not even mentioned on the maps in Palestinian Authority school books. Instead, the region is referred to as Palestine or occupied Palestine. So you're going to go in and reform this? These children, these adults that are Palestinian adults, from the time they were born, they were taught to hate Israel. They went to school named after a terrorist. Wherever they go, the public squares, the government buildings named after terrorists. Their school books teach them to hate the Jews. And you're going to reform that? And as Benjamin Netanyahu said, they promise and promise and promise, and they lie and they lie and they lie, and they never change, and they never will. They exist to destroy Israel, and that's what Prime Minister Netanyahu said after October 7th. He said they're all the same. The Palestinian Authority or Hamas, they exist for the same reason, to destroy the nation of Israel. And by the way, the Palestinians don't want a two-state solution. They want a one-state solution. They want to destroy Israel. That's all they want. Okay. So this is another article. They support the Palestinians, glorify Hamas. Hamas, they're celebrities among the Palestinian people, not just in Gaza, but also in Judea and Samaria. This is an article from the Times of Israel, December 13th, 2023. A wartime opinion poll among Palestinians published Wednesday shows a dramatic rise in support for the Hamas terror group in the West Bank, with backing appearing to have ticked up, as well as even in the devastated Gaza Strip, and an overwhelming rejection of the Palestinian Authority, President Mahmoud Abbas, with nearly 90% saying he must resign. The poll found that 72% of respondents believe Hamas was correct to launch its October 7th onslaught. Now, this is a poll of the Palestinian people. 72% believe Hamas was correct to launch its October 7th onslaught, with 82% in the West Bank, that's Judea and Samaria, and 57% in Gaza backing it. Now, you're going to give a state to these people? So the only answer in Israel is to give the entire land to Israel and let them govern it, and let them deal with terrorism, and let them deal with all the Hamas and all of that. That's the only answer. But if you think that bringing in an international security force like we have right now through the United Nations, which is a joke, if you believe that bringing in an international force and trying to reform these people, to vet police, to set up a government, and trust Hamas not to be a part of it. In 2005, see, Israel had Gaza before 2005, and it flourished. The Israelis used it for farming, for raising flowers, all kinds of things. It flourished. I mean, billions of dollars a year in the Gaza Strip. But then there was this peace deal in the George W. Bush administration that everybody heralded because it was a land for peace. And the Palestinians says, if you give up this land, Gaza, we'll stop attacking you. No more terrorism. We'll be your peaceful neighbors if you give us this land. So we forced Israel out of the Gaza Strip. 5 days later, Hurricane Katrina hit the Gulf Coast, and the Jewish rabbis were saying that's what happens. That's God's judgment for America, for you forcing us out of the Gaza Strip. And so they got the land. Did Israel get peace? No. After the Palestinians got the land, Fatah and Hamas, two rival factions of Palestinians, went to war with each other in Gaza. Hamas won. They haven't had an election since. They have terrorized the Palestinian people in Gaza. They have forced many of them to do what they want them to do. Right now, today, the Hamas is killing Palestinians on the street. The State Department last weekend issued an alert that they had credible evidence that Hamas was about to launch an attack on Palestinian people, their rivals in Gaza. And so they're murderers, they're thugs. Hamas took over, and they have done nothing with the Gaza Strip except use it as a staging ground to attack and destroy Israel. They've done, and they'll do the same thing again. Expecting the Palestinians to change is like expecting cancer to become healthy tissue. It's the only answer is to let Israel have the land and let them deal with it, because they can and will deal with it just like they have been in Gaza before this so-called peace deal came into being. Here's the other problem with this peace deal. God will judge it. God will judge it. God says in Genesis 12:3, I will bless him who blesses you. I will curse him who curses you, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Are the Palestinian people blessing Israel? No. Oh, they hate Israel. They curse Israel. They're trained from birth to hate Israel. And so the United Nations hates Israel. Look at all the people of the world right now that are full of hatred and vitriol before the nation of Israel. God is going to judge it. Every nation in the history of the world that's come against Israel has either ceased to exist or they're no longer a superpower. Rome, Egypt, Babylon, you go right through the list of all of them, Germany. And so God has always judged it. He always will judge it. And this deal right now, by the way, did you know what Israel gets in this deal? Not one thing. They're going to give up East Jerusalem. They're going to give up Gaza. They're going to give up Judea and Samaria to the Palestinians. If there is a two-stage solution, they're going to give all of that up. And you know what they're going to get? An empty promise of peace, just like they've gotten before. The reason this peace plan is guaranteed to fail is because God is against it. And the Bible tells us the end of the story. So let me talk about what I believe is going to happen next.